Hello again, everyone. It's great seeing you again, and thanks for joining us for this edition of Alaska Weather on Sunday, 3rd day of January 2021. I'm Dave Percy, meteorologist with the National Weather Service, and I'll be hosting today's show. Up first, hazardous weather graphics. Still have some wind chill action going on, at least for a while longer. Wind chill warning there for the northeastern Brooks Range, eastern North Slope areas, but not out to the Arctic coast. And that's out until, let's see, midnight tonight for wind chills to 70 degrees below zero with areas of gusty winds. And wind chill advisory is out for the entire night tonight until 6 a.m. Monday morning there for the Kobuk Valley, Ambler into the Noatak Valley. And that's for wind chills running anywhere from 35 to 55 degrees below zero. And that's out until 6 a.m., at which time they'll either cancel it or kick it out a little longer. So from there, that's it for the watches, warnings, advisories anywhere around the state today. Satellite imagery showing what looks like a break coming in earlier, at least to the southern panhandle there over the Dixon entrance area. Some breaks in the overcast as that trough lifts northward over the northern panhandle, brought the snow into the northern areas there. Juneau had anywhere from 2 to 5 inches in the greater Juneau area. That's tapered off now and ended. And really not a whole lot along the North Gulf Coast at all, maybe some scattered shower activity, but really nothing heavy. And some clouds in over the eastern Copper River Basin to the eastern and upper Tanana Valley, and that's about it. Areas of clouds actually scattered around the entire interior with a fair amount of clearing, though, over the northwest interior, actually from the central interior on out to the Seward Peninsula into the northern Bering Sea and along the northwest coast. Looked like some clearing there, as well as out over areas of the Bering Sea. Pribilos might have seen some patches of blue in the sky today with some snow showers around mixed with rain, and that old low continuing to slowly weaken, but holds together enough there over the southwest Bering Sea to keep the winds up in gale force category there for the western west central Aleutians, at least through tomorrow. Otherwise, gusty winds and cold air continue to pour southward from the Chukchi Sea into the northern Bering Sea, with Gamble still reporting winds gusting to 45 miles an hour with some periods of light snow there as that cold air picks up moisture south of the main ice pack there, overwater trajectory, dropping it as just some light snow with the gusty winds. And up along the northwest coast there, particularly around Point Hope, they had peak wind gusts of 52 miles per hour. And then the higher elevations of Dalong Mountains even higher than that, but actually lower than yesterday. And then you can see that storm system winding up well southwest of the Queen Charlotte Islands there. That's going to be pushing northeastward, and over the next couple of days will bring an increasing wind and precipitation pattern into the panhandle, and possible storm force winds late Tuesday, possibly definitely high-end gales will be moving in across all that area. And from there, we'll look at the map today, just a weak trough there today, and winds 25 to 30 miles per hour in gusts, windier locations like Cape Decision, central and south coast, and other areas lighter than that. And again, the snow several inches there over the northern panhandle from Juneau, anywhere from, as I mentioned, 2 to 5 in the greater Juneau area, and that's tapered off here this afternoon. And then a break coming in ahead of that warm front off to the southwest with a 976 millibar low, and the low south of the Kenai Peninsula, keeping the moisture mostly off the coast, at least this afternoon. Snow ended earlier today at Kodiak after changing over to rain overnight at times. So they had some, well, not much in the way of new snow. Had about maybe 2 to 3 tenths of an inch water equivalent falling there. But that's ended now, and temperatures below freezing into the 20s. With clearing skies, winds not too bad, kind of on the light side. Weak trough brought rain and snow showers Alaska Peninsula, back up toward now east of the Pribilos, but still off the southwest coast. and breezy with areas of rain and snow mixed, or showers there for the Aleutians. Central western Bering Sea, and that wraps back up to about St. Lawrence Island. High pressure, light winds, variable clouds on the Arctic coast. Temperatures north slope this afternoon running mid-20s below zero. And for tonight, not much change up there. A little colder. Some areas down to 40, in towards 40 degrees below zero, but winds will be lighter up in that area than they had been. And it stays unsettled for the North Gulf Coast, and actually moisture increasing along with the clouds will continue to increase here for south central Alaska, with increasing chances of snow there, northern Kenai Peninsula from western Prince William Sound, as well as northern Prince William Sound into the Turn-to-Ganar, Matanuska Valley, maybe even Anchorage into the possibly the Susitna Valley to a lesser extent. Now extend eastward into the northern Panhandle. As you can see, wind and rain increase over the southern southeast coast. And tomorrow that low swings up right off the south coast tomorrow, back to the west, another system, strong one, just grazing the Alaska Peninsula with a brief increase in precipitation and winds. And trough periods of light snow, Kenai Peninsula into south central Alaska, kind of diminishes on Tuesday as that strong system brings gale and possible storm force winds, increasing moisture, another round of warmer temperatures into the Panhandle, and that other strong low pulls eastward, but stays well south of Kodiak Island. Lows tonight, 25 to 45 degrees below zero over the northern central interior, milder along the Arctic coast, and below zero conditions all the way out to the southwest coastline. Lower 30s eastern Aleutians, or all of the Aleutians in the case of Atka, upper 20s, mid-20s northern Panhandle, lower to mid-30s south. Highs tomorrow below zero west and north of the Alaska Range all the way to the Arctic coast. Lower 30s to lower 40s for the Panhandle, teens and 20s south central Alaska, followed by lows on Tuesday morning. Maybe a little milder, especially south central Alaska and the North Gulf Coast. Panhandle upper teens, say towards Skagway and Haines, to mid to upper 30s in the south. A little below zero, milder for the Copper River Basin, and then highs staying below zero north and west of the Alaska Range.
And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Moving on to flying weather for tomorrow, we've got some IFR up there on the central north slope and east central and eastern Beaufort Sea coastline. Narrow band there along the southern slopes of the eastern Brooks Range area there, with a little bit of marginal VFR extending southwestward to about the Yukon River. Another batch there over toward around Eagle and off to the north and northwest and west. And then VFR for the 40 Mile Country, Tanana Valley, Seward Peninsula, marginal VFR, some IFR, St. Lawrence Island. Then a band of IFR there with the frontal boundary coming up toward the southwest coast and just lifting north of the Pribilof Islands back into the west central Aleutians. IFR tomorrow morning, northern Cook Inlet into Prince William Sound, also for the Matanuska-Susitna Valley early on, southern slopes of the central Alaska Range, and also for the northern Panhandle, VFR, southern southeast coast. And for the afternoon time frame, not much change up there for the North Slope Arctic coastal areas, and some IFR, eastern Brooks Range, marginal conditions into the upper Yukon Valley, the flats area. And again, a band of IFR strung out there from the western Aleutians and across central Bering Sea to the Pribilofs, almost to the southwest coast, actually in some areas there, Nunivak Island, and then eastward there. And threatening St. Lawrence Island, back down across the Seward Peninsula, or I'm sorry, the Alaska Peninsula, Kodiak Island IFR, and becoming VFR in, call it central, northern Cook Inlet, Anchorage, Palmer, Eagle River, into the western, central western Matanuska Valley and part of the Susitna Valley, Talkeetnas, still IFR into Prince William Sound and much of the North Gulf Coast. But Yakutat, northern Panhandle, VFR, IFR and marginal conditions, southern southeast coast. Outlook for Tuesday. Again, areas of VFR in the interior with areas of also scattered IFR and a little more widespread marginal VFR. South and east of the Alaska Range, though, pretty good IFR. Susitna Valley, Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, possibly the Matanuska Valley, Prince William Sound. And then that extends south and then east. We're just catching the southern Panhandle. Not too bad up to the north. Areas of IFR out over the Bering Sea, along with marginal VFR and very little VFR. And for the afternoon, areas of VFR in the interior again, especially along the Yukon, Kuskokwim River Valley areas, except up over the Yukon Flats. and in toward Eagle. A little lower conditions there, but not too bad. Scattered IFR down the 40-mile country, upper Tanana Valley. Eastern Alaska Range, maybe the west central Copper River Basin, Cook Inlet, VFR, Manouscus-Susitna Valley, VFR, Ketchimak, Kamishak Bays, marginal to IFR, especially for Kodiak Island, Pribilofs, eastward into Bristol Bay, IFR, and some IFR sliding on up into the north coast of the Panhandle, possibly over toward areas of Lynn Canal, up toward Haines, maybe Skagway, marginal VFR, all the way down to Dixon Entrance. And for passes, Anatuvik and Adigan, good VFR, or VFR tomorrow, optimistically. Lake Clark and Merrill, possible IFR eastern entrances. Rainy, though, just marginal. Windy, possible marginal VFR southern approach. And for Isabel, lowest conditions south side, north side VFR. Mentasta VFR. Tanita, marginal VFR on the eastern entrance, otherwise VFR. And for Portage, possible, or probably likely IFR. Lowest conditions will be on the eastern entrance. Could be IFR even on the west side, but the lowest conditions will be Passage Canal side. Chilcoot and White, VFR. Freezing levels north of the Pribilofs, south of St. Matthew Island, Alaska Peninsula to Kodiak, up along the North Gulf Coast, across the northern Panhandle, 2,000 feet there down toward Dixon Entrance. Icing, areas of the greatest potential there. Kenai Peninsula could be some areas of considerable moderate rime icing, and even for the southern southeast coast. Otherwise, storm south of the Alaska Peninsula stays far enough south that you barely get any icing threat at all there, and maybe some elevated icing potential there for the central Bering Sea into the southwest coast. Jet stream still well south of the area, but 65 knot southwest flow with that elongating upper trough there. Seward Peninsula to the Arctic coast. So southwest flow on the increase, so eastern and southern part of the state, 9,000 about the same, 3,000 not much different. Let me back that up a bit. 40 knots east-northeast there along the northwest coast. 55 knots, though, cutting across the Queen Charlotte. 60 knots staying south of the Alaska Peninsula. Turbulence not too bad. Maybe the southern southeast coast will be a little bumpy with considerable moderate, as well as the western Aleutians. Otherwise, pretty smooth. The remainder of the state could be a little bumpy there over the eastern Alaska Range, northwest coast, and St. Lawrence Island.
When I first started working here in the early 90s, this is where the glacier was. I mean, where we're walking right now would have been a pile of gravel that had been pushed up by the glacier, and then we would have had 100 to 200 foot high cliffs of ice right here. And as you can see, that's changed quite a bit. And if you look at that in 2 dimensions, you can sort of see the terminus used to be here, now it's back there. That gives you one measure. What that kind of 2-dimensional look doesn't show is how much mass has been lost, that the glacier has just sort of deflated. These 200 foot cliffs of ice have disappeared and pulled back to this gentle sloping glacier you see now.
When I was working in Kenai Fjords National Park, I used the topographic maps to navigate where I was, and I realized that the mapping of the glaciers was really off. The glaciers had receded a lot. There were new rivers and lakes that were establishing where the ice used to be or should have been according to the maps. And so then I did a study on this and found out that we had a 5% loss of glacier ice mass in the Kenai Fjords area between 1950 and 1985. Big change.
You know, one of the most compelling things we do, though, to document glacier change is simply take photographs. We've had repeat photography projects here at the park. They may not give you the most accurate data in terms of how much mass or real specific measurements, but what they do give you is a visual representation that can't be argued with. I mean, it really requires no interpretation.
Understanding what's happening, understanding these processes, and possibly being able to predict what's going to happen in the future is the best that we can do, and that requires science and research.
There's considerable research on climate change in Alaska. The most significant, I would say right now, is the Natural Resources Inventory and Monitoring Program, which is looking at change across a wide variety of vital signs or indicators.
Kenai Fjords National Park is actually a pretty good representation of what's going on globally with regards to glacier ice retreat. There have been studies showing that mountain glaciers are retreating all over the planet. There are probably well over 90% of the glaciers are in retreat status. There are a few that are advancing, and some are holding, their terminus point. But at Kenai Fjords, the tidewater glaciers are retreating more dramatically, but even the land-based glaciers in the terminus positions are retreating. It's pretty common for all the mountain glaciers. The big mountain glaciers in Wrangell St. Elias National Park, they're mostly in retreat too. We're really entering an interesting phase where what we call the cryosphere, the ice on the planet, is melting.
You know, in the more immediate past, it's clear that since the Pleistocene, glaciers have been retreating. So the idea that glaciers retreat is is no revelation. They've been retreating from across North America for the last 10,000 years. What appears to have changed and what has people's attention is the rate at which they're retreating. In the case of Exit Glacier, we have scientists who've been looking at it. We have evidence that the glaciers left behind, or we can track that retreat for about the last 200 years. And we can say with confidence that in the last decade, that rate has increased.
Terminus mapping is a great way to map a small portion of the ice field. We come out twice a year and we use a GPS to walk the edge of the terminus and map the farthest extent of Exit Glacier. And that allows us to see what type of changes are occurring over the winter accumulation period and the summer ablation period. With that data, that can help us as we witness these changes within the ice field, we can hopefully be able to correlate that with the weather data that we have.
When you look at an ice field that's 750 square miles, when you look at a glacier that towers hundreds of feet high, you get a sense of permanence. You think these things are massive, they're somehow a permanent sort of feature, and yet in a very short period of time, in a matter of a couple of decades, we've seen dramatic change in those things.
At Exit Glacier, we have a time-lapse camera set up on the glacier that allows us to take a couple photos every single day, and then to put that sequence of photos into a video where we can see changes of the glacier and the vegetation phenology throughout an entire year.
Virtually all the glaciers in Alaska are receding. Some glaciers are moving forward. That's not an indication that they're actually growing in size. It's just the rate at which they're slipping down the mountain.
In some cases, some of these glaciers are receding back up onto land, and so they're producing less ice. When you change the glacier systems, you're changing habitat for marine mammals and other wildlife. And the populations of harbor seals have dropped dramatically in the fjords. In 1980, shortly after the establishment of the park, in Island Bay, we had maybe 1,500 harbor seals. Nowadays, it's a few hundred.
In Arctic environments, much of the sunlight that reaches the Earth bounces back because it hits snow and reflects off into space, or ice on the ocean and reflects off into space. That's the albedo effect. When the snow thaws and instead you have rock or vegetation, or when the ice thaws and you have transparent ocean, the sunlight will convert to other wavelengths that'll convert essentially to warmth. That does not bounce back into the atmosphere as much. So consequently, you get a warming of the ocean, you get a warming of the ground, you get a thawing of frozen soils or permafrost, you get a more rapid thawing of sea ice. So once the ice and once the snow is off of the surface, the rate of warming increases considerably.
If you're driving out to Exit Glacier, you'll actually start to see signs along the side of the road that have dates on them. Visitors sometimes are confused. They think they're elevations or something until they get up to the glacier and realize, oh, those were all date signs along the road that were telling me when the glacier was there. Another thing that's been happening in the Exit Glacier area in recent years is this flooding that comes at a time we're not used to. We're used to having maybe some flooding in the fall when we have a lot of heavy rain. This has suddenly been some flooding that's coming in the middle of the summer, usually not associated with precipitation events. It's associated with warmer weather and melting. When you walk down one of our trails that leads to Exit Glacier, there are a number of ways to get out there, but what used to be the main route is no longer really the main route because of the way the glacier has changed. So this main route to the glacier used to provide dramatic views of the glacier as you walk towards it. In fact, there was a large kiosk built at the end of this trail for people to stop and rest and enjoy the view of the glacier. Now, if they stop and rest at this kiosk, people think, why did the park put a kiosk here? Because it looks out at some shrubs. And there's no glacier within view anymore.
The way we solve big problems like this is not all at once. There's a thing called the Sokolov's wedges, and you just take a little bite of the pie, one sliver at a time. So we try to do incremental changes.
When we talk to people about our concerns about climate change, about the changes that are happening to the glacier, we also want to leave them with some idea of what we're doing to mitigate some of the effects of climate change. For example, here at the park, as we retire vehicles out of our fleet, we try to replace them with electric vehicles or hybrid vehicles. We've done things like at the Glacier Nature Center, helping to sort of experiment and install a cutting-edge fuel cell as opposed to running some traditional power source out there that relies on some sort of more greenhouse-producing gas.
My main hope for the future is that people get the message that the planet is changing fairly rapidly in places, particularly places like Kenai Fjords National Park, and that it is, we think, there's good evidence it's a result of atmospheric changes, which are measured in terms of human inputs into the atmosphere.
The rapid rate at which these glaciers are changing now offers us the opportunity to talk about this place as a way of looking into the future. In a lot of parts of the country, climate change issues are a little more subtle. And we can point here and say, look how fast this is changing. This is what the future holds for perhaps a lot of us and a lot of the planet as climate continues to change.
I'm optimistic that people and nature will adapt to change, but my expectation is that change will occur. Time will tell.
And now, marine weather around Alaska.
Welcome back. Looking at today's sea ice analysis. Not a lot of change from yesterday there from the stronger winds. Earlier, we've had some ice pull away from the southwest coast there, as well as eastern Norton Sound. And less ice, kind of a loss of ice in Bristol Bay over the last few days, as well as along the southwest coast, south of Nunivak Island, but still extending out to St. Lawrence Island. And moving on to coastal water forecasts for the Panhandle tomorrow, east-southeast 30-knot winds on the south coast, seas 19 to 22 feet. And the north coast, east-southeast 20 to 25 knots with seas up to 16 feet. Variable winds 15 knots over the central northern inside waters, seas 3 feet. Winds will be more predominantly from the north for Lynn Canal. And small craft advisories for Clarence Strait, southeast winds 25 knots. Big increase in the winds on Tuesday with that next storm pushing on in. Again, possibly storm force winds in a narrow band in advance of the front. But right now, south to southeast winds 40 to 45 knots. Pretty well covers it for the day Tuesday for the entire length of the coastline there. Seas running 22 to 24 feet. And 45-knot winds coming up in the latter part of the afternoon for Clarence Strait there with 17-foot seas. And southeast 20 Stevens Passage, north 15 Lynn Canal. Moving to south central Alaska, North Gulf Coast, eastern North Gulf Coast, gale warnings tomorrow, east 35 knots, seas 17 feet. Pretty brisk there in Prince William Sound with an east wind sustained at 30 knots and 7-foot seas. Western North Gulf Coast, east at 20, Barren Islands north at 20, small craft advisories, southern Cook Inlet and the Kamishak Bay. Well, winds are forecast to be north at 25 knots and 15 knots, northern Cook Inlet. That'll become northeast at 20 on Tuesday there, but south of the Foreland, small craft advisories right on into Kamishak Bay, northeast at 30 knots, and east 30 for the Barren Islands. Gales now for the western North Gulf Coast at 35 knots, just under storm force gales there for the eastern zones, 45 knots with seas building to 25 feet, and small craft advisories continue for Prince William Sound for east winds at 25 knots. Kodiak Island, lightest winds on the east side there at 15. And out of the east, and northeast 20 for Shelikof Strait. Small craft advisories from Sitkinak to Cape Sarachev, east 25 to 30 knots. Lighter there on the Bering Sea side of the peninsula, southeast 15. Back to small craft advisories from Bristol Bay for 25 knot winds from the east. And those will be north of 25 for Bristol Bay on Tuesday. Alaska Peninsula, pretty easy. North 30 knots, seas 13 to 17 feet. And Castle Cape to Sitkinak, including Shelikof Strait, north winds 25 knots. East side of Kodiak Island now, winds coming up to 30 knots from the northeast, seas building to 22 feet. On Alaska Island tomorrow, east or north to northeast, 15 to 25 knots. Strongest winds south side of the island. Unmak Island, lighter winds 10 to 15 knots, mostly out of the east. And 15-knot winds for Adak from the east. And then small craft advisories on Chitka Island, northeast 25. Gales, say west of Kiska to Shimianatu for northwest winds at 40 knots, 22-foot seas. Again, that associated with that old low, slowly weakening, but hanging together enough for pretty good gales out there. And then for Tuesday, we'll lose the gales and go to small craft advisories. Northwest 25 knots, western Aleutians, Adak and Atka, north to west 20 knots. Unmak Island, northwest 25. On Alaska Island, north to northwest at 30 knots. And for the southwest coast, we've got east 25 there, blowing out of Kuskokwim Bay. Along the Yukon Delta coast, northeast 25 knots, northeast 30 knots for St. Lawrence Island, and northeast 30 knots for St. Matthew Island. Lighter winds for the Purbloss will be out of the northeast at 15. And that'll pick up to small craft advisory levels there for the Purbloff Islands on Tuesday. Northwest 25 knots, 30-knot winds everywhere else from the north or northwest. And on up to the Bering Sea, east side there, Eastern Beaufort Sea, east northeast 15, 10 knots from the north-northeast, central and west coast, and then 20 knots there on the western capes and brisk wind advisories from Cape Thompson to Wales. And that holds through Tuesday. Not much change there. Small craft advisories, Wales to Cape Thompson from the north, 25 knots, and east 15 for the central and east side, northeast at 10 on the western coast. Tonight, no wind up there to speak of any significance, dry over the interior, but increasing snow chances and clouds and temperatures coming up. Prince William Sound, Cook Inlet, south central Alaska in general, and rain becomes a little heavier for the southern panhandle. Not much change out west. Strong storm just grazes the Alaska Peninsula tomorrow with a brief increase in wind and precipitation to a much more extent there for the southern southeast coast, and then an even stronger system moves into the panhandle on Tuesday afternoon. Thanks for joining us.
These forecasts are for planning purposes only. Call 1-800-WX-BRIEF for a formal pre-flight briefing. Always file a flight plan before you go flying. The U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary urges you to leave a float plan with a friend or the harbor master before you go boating.